Welcome everyone to another episode of the Lorepod podcast. I'm your host Dakota Morgan, coming to you from Phoenix, Arizona. Today we're going to be covering a little bit of Marvel here today on the podcast. And before I get into that though, be sure, a little business aside, my Twitch, CodaRex97, my Instagram at Dakota_Morgan97, and of course my ex, not my ex-girlfriends, but my ex at DakotaMorgan3 down below. God damn, now it's a fucking dad joke. All right, besides the point here, diving into the lore. We're going to be doing a character lore here today. Stay tuned for some more story lore, though, coming up in the future. We're going to be diving into Marvel's The Scarlet Witch. Not the MCU really per se here, but more or less the comic book version of Scarlet Witch that we may be curious to see what happened. Now, some unknown facts here with you that you may or may not have known. If you are a late night trivia bartender goer, though, you may know Scarlet Witch is actually the daughter of Magneto, and Quicksilver is actually her brother, some of which we don't see in the movies, but we do see in the comic books. And no, Quicksilver is not okay with her dating Vision in the comics as well, because it is a thing. Also, apparently S.H.I.E.L.D. has sex tapes of Vision, but that's a different story. Now, a little bit into the backstory, though, of Scarlet Witch, Romana Maximoff. She actually grew up with gypsies. They may matter, may not be at that term there, but it is true in the books. She grew up with gypsies' parents, but actually turned out to be their aunt and uncle. And once she used her powers in town, though, thinking that it was A-okay, her magical little powers, she was actually chased around by a mob. And they were attacked very heavily by that. So it turned out her real parents were actually her aunt and uncle. Plot twist. Now, she was approached, though, after this by Professor Xavier to join, School for Gifted Youngsters, maybe possibly the X-Men and shit. She actually rejected his ass. It was denied by him and stuff, too. She's like, no, I'm out of here. We're done. We ain't doing this. But actually, later on, joined Magneto and the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, which, fair enough. So here's the thing, though. It actually applied to the Avengers when the Avengers openings did happen, though. Her and her brother Quicksilver were the first in the new wave to join the Avengers, actually, back in the day here. We're looking at the late 1900s, though, with comics, and that may age some of you fuckers, but guess what? We're all old. Now, she was involved with Vision. We know that she took the android penis. It is true. But here's the thing. Once she actually killed Vision in the books by mind controlling She-Hulk to rip him in half. Yeah, it is correct. You heard that right. Mind-controlled She-Hulk to rip him in half. Talk about a breakup. But oops. There was a storyline where she was actually replaced, by the way, with a Doom bot. If you don't know what a Doom bot is, that is where Doom, Fantastic Four, Avengers, and overall Marvel bad guy, Dr. Doom, he actually has Doom bots where he has, replicants of himself, and everyone thinks it's a Doom, but it's actually like a Doom bot. It's just a robot and shit like that. The whole fucking time. It happens all the time, and they're called Doom bots. But apparently, you know what? Hey, he replaced Scarlet Witch with one in a storyline. Now, more iconically, though, she did use her powers and pissed off the X-Men to this day, by the way. She used her powers and said, no more mutants. And she got rid of 99% of mutants' powers. But during this process, some of which were using their powers, some of which were doing some crazy ass shit, right? Well, they just turned human, and their body says, you're human, you can't process this. There was someone who was stretching and she had a very long neck, and her body was like, no, you're dead at that point. So she killed a good amount of people here. 99%. I think it was very much very, very, very core X-Men survived this. And it was known to be called later on as M-Day. M-Day was huge in the books. It took a lot to reverse it, by the way, as well. If you hear loud sounds, by the way, Pedro the kitty is currently going through a box here in the office. Pedro, what are you doing? Oh, wow, to you too, my Pepe. Now, during her childhood, by the way, too, she actually had a nanny, right? So she's gonna have a nanny, because, being gypsy parents and shit like that, things are gonna be a little bit rough. So she had a nanny, but the high evolutionary and the guy who's an alien does weird genetic bio experiments and shit like that, too. He was in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, the one that made us all cry. That guy, he actually created their nanny, just made their nanny, basically. And it was during midhood named Bova. And Bova was also, by the way, a giant, animal, of course, by the way. It's like a giant, pig, warthog kind of thing. Wild. No, it was actually a cow. Correction, read the notes correctly, Dakota. Jesus Christ. Yes, we're going to leave that in. Yeah, it was a giant cow person that was their nanny. Because, when you're a child and you have a giant cow person that's taking care of you here, when your parents are gypsies and you have superpowers and you live in the world of Marvel, that's just how world goes, huh? Now, this actually ties in later on though to a story because it ties into the storyline where for many decades, we actually thought they were the kids of Magneto, right? Well, turned out they were actually the creations of the High Evolutionary. And of course, how did Wanda get her powers? Wanda got her power because she was the High Evolutionary created the twins and actually battled God with magic, and that's where she got her powers from, which were actually magic and not the powers of just mutants and like ability to control time and space. A retcon where I like half of it of, maybe it's her mutant abilities, whatnot too. That's fine because we have magic, on the X-Men team, whatever the hell. She has her powers with like the power of opening portals to hell, and then also saying it's not the daughter of Magneto, but it's been the case for decades, and there's been many storylines and TV shows and shit like that had that. Whatever, but I guess, in some continuities actually take that as a thing, and some are like, fuck you, we're not going to include that. We still have Polaris, though, which we may cover Polaris, Magneto's true daughter and heir. She was in that X-Men TV show called The Gifted. Ooh, I gotta finish that show. It's on Disney Plus now, thank God. Grandma and I watched that show a lot. Tangents aside, so that did make her powers not be a mutant base then, and just magic base, which is why we see her in Doctor Strange with Multiverse of Magic, all Multiverse of Madness, and all the shit like that as well in the Avengers. Because it used to be that her powers were kind of, maybe she had DNA change base, whatever the fuck, and then it turned into just being magic later on in the MCU. So that is definitely a big thing as well that we've seen. Either way, though, Wanda Maximoff has a lot of storylines in the comics here, a lot of retcons, a lot of new things, and she has the MCU version of her now as well. Is she dead? Probably fucking not. I really highly doubt that, but I also know I gotta pick me up a pair of Mickey ears of the Scarlet Witch, because goddamn, they're cool as hell. And also, I like the Scarlet Witch in the MCU. She's pretty fucking dope. I like her storyline, and I liked WandaVision. That was a good show. I liked her. I don't know. I'm a sucker. I'm a guy of science. You all know that if you follow me on social media and know my careers and shit like that. I am a huge science guy, but I love magic. Double-edged fucking sword, right? All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me on this episode here today. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode of the Lorepod podcast. Be sure to subscribe whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening to the podcast wherever you catch podcasts. Leave us a review because it helps us out greatly. Because goddamn, I've been podcasting now for almost over 10 years. Previous shows and now the Lorepod podcast. And guess what? It's a big wide world of these shows, so all your support does help. Again, my social media and Twitch are going to be in the description box down below. Give me a follow on there. Say what you think about the show. I accept all reviews. Thanks everybody as always, and remember, stay creative everyone.